What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Bro History. It's Henry Zamota and my good friend Daniel Abdeljabbar. How are you, my friend?
Chilling as per usual. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty well. Do you know what really sucks? So
what really
last
sucks?
week we do this show on the October surprise, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And we do this episode.
Like, what is it?
And I had a horrible time of trying to name this podcast so people would be interested in listening to it.
Right.
But essentially, we were talking about the past conspiracies to prevent people from having October surprises, specifically the Nixon and the Reagan campaigns. And we were talking about, what could be the October surprise this entire time. It wasn't just a tax returns. It's got to be something. The minute, I'm talking about 3 minutes later, we finish this podcast, that's when the news that Trump has COVID-19 hits. If we had just listened, if we had just maybe checked Twitter, or if we had just recorded a little bit longer, somebody would have notified us that, hey, Trump just caught COVID. And it would have been the best ending of that episode.
Right, exactly. So
that is, it was frustrating, but Trump seems to, I don't feel bad about, saying, oh, fuck, we missed an opportunity to have a great, ending to that show, because, profiting off, or not really profiting, but taking advantage of his illness, because he seems to be doing better from all accounts, which is, I guess, is a good thing. But
well, yeah, we wish him well.
Yeah, I'm doing tremendous, but
I'm doing great, better than I was 20 years ago.
Whatever he was on is a hell of a drug.
Seriously.
Now, I guess today's episode we're going to kind of chill a little bit.
So
we're going to talk more so about the debate, and I guess kind of the general political climate, and then we'll probably have some updates for you on the conflict going on in Nagorno-Karabakh. Just because it's, a new conflict and there's so much thing on the ground. So we'll try to get to that later in the episode. But I guess for now, let's talk about the VP debate, because what's interesting about this is that I felt that, so 2016, I didn't even watch the VP debate. So I don't think I even looked at videos of Mike Pence and Tim Kaine's debates.
Oh man, I almost forgot about Tim Kaine in general.
Most people have forgotten Tim Kaine is a human being and still exists.
Right.
I never watched them. I don't think I ever watched the highlights. So honestly, it was a blank slate for me to see Mike Pence on the debate stage. On the other hand, I saw Kamala Harris kind of go down in flames in the primary debates when Tulsi Gabbard just basically stuffed her in the locker over her history as an incredibly aggressive prosecutor. Now, usually debates don't really matter. VP debates don't really matter that much, but it definitely felt like this had a little, at the very least, a little bit more weight for two reasons. Reason one being that the last debate was a complete shit show, and basically you weren't able, a normal human or anyone for that matter would be able to comprehend anything as far as a logical thought.
Which is why we didn't cover it at all in our last episode. We were like, nothing to see here. Move along.
That happened.
Right.
well, that sure happened. So we didn't. I mean, there was really nothing worth saying.
No.
The ending. I think my grand conclusion was I'm happy that everyone got to see how ugly government is. But
yeah.
I think, but the political impact as far as the election, I think that Joe Biden ultimately won because the bar was set so low that he was, the claims that were coming out of the right wing media is that this guy basically had to wear a diaper because he was going to be crap in his pants. He was completely senile and had no control, and that he was going to stutter and get lost in a sentence and not be able to even complete the debate. he sounded just as fine, just as good when he was debating Bernie, where he sounded fine. Right. So I think that whole thing was overblown, and ultimately I think the right wing media set themselves up for failure on that. Now, this debate. That being said, Joe Biden's 78 years old, and he still has these amazing gaffes where it's just like, what the fuck did this guy just say? Like, was he there? And just to name it, I mean, there's so many to count, but there's a lot of these media moments where you're just like, what? What about your hairy legs? Like the other day, he like told these young girls, like, get down and dance. It's like, I want to see you dancing. And everyone's like, dude, like, you're the guy.
Well, my favorite one has always been the push-up competition.
Oh, yeah. Get down and do push-ups. So whoever the VP candidate is, there was some kind of an assumption that he wasn't going to get through the campaign. Not the campaign. He wasn't going to make it all 4 years, and the person who is his VP candidate would be the real president. That would be the real president.
Well, in fairness, like, we could levy the same, argument against Trump. I mean, they're not that much difference in age. They're both in their 70s, and no matter who wins, because one of them will win, unless like Joe Jorgensen decides to come up out of nowhere. No matter which one of them wins, they're going to be the de facto oldest president to ever serve term. So I think, the question on everyone's minds was, okay, we got two old guys, right? One of them just recently got COVID, which was crazy. Like, I think it's pretty relevant to pay attention to the VP debate. And I totally agree with you. I didn't watch the Tim Kaine and Pence debate, mostly because I didn't give a shit. And yeah, this one did feel like an iota more important than any of the other ones. Yeah,
and at the very least, let's just say if due to Biden's age, which is a possibility, but I don't know how likely it is. He wasn't,
or Trump's age,
or Trump's age. Fair. All right, I'll be fair. That at the very least, if there would be a chance that Biden wouldn't run for re-election if he won, and then Kamala Harris would have the advantage of essentially running as the incumbent, and having that, and and same thing with Mike Pence, having the advantage of being the former VP running for president, like George Bush. George Bush Sr. I guess it didn't work out for Al Gore, but
no.
It just felt like the stakes were a little bit higher. All right, before I give you kind of like my initial review, I want to hear what your thoughts were, because I'm living in my own bubble. Everyone who frequently listens to the show probably knows that my political opinion. So I want to hear your take first.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I think you could probably sum up, the entire debate to like maybe 4 or 5 major categories. So I think, without diving too deeply into each single point, just like as a high-level overview, I think COVID-19 was still that big ticket issue, which I think was pretty obvious going into the debate. That the fact that this was actually a debate this time, but no one actually answered any of the moderator's questions, that was pretty omnipresent throughout the entire night.
It wasn't like a confrontation. It just wasn't like a because the last debate, it wasn't even an argument. It was just like a schoolyard confrontation. Like, that's all it was.
Right. It wasn't that bad. It was very muted, very calm, very chill. But nobody actually answered any of the questions, which was really frustrating. But like, what should you expect? And
it's a milquetoast political debate. No one answers questions.
Seriously.
Revert to talking point.
But I think both candidates, when addressed with hardballs, sidestepped, a lot of the questions pretty hard. And this happened on both sides. And it was almost, at times, a little bit cringeworthy, the fact that they blatantly ignored, like, the hard question and just decided to talk about whatever they wanted. And then, in general, I think the moderator kind of sucked. Susan, she did her best. She tried by coming out of the gate by saying, like, hey, no interruptions. And, she kept saying it the entire night. And for the most part, people didn't interrupt each other. But that really wasn't the issue this time around. This time around, the issue was that the candidates weren't answering the questions as posed to them. And so I think she did a poor job at following up and asking like these follow-up questions to get people to hold people to account to answer the question, because I think largely a lot of really important questions went unanswered. And for that reason, my overarching opinion about this last debate is very similar, but for different reasons, to last debate, which is this didn't change anyone's minds. Not very much, at least. If you went into it as a conservative, you're still a conservative, and you'll probably still vote for Trump. And if you went in as a liberal, you're still a liberal, and you'll probably still vote for Biden. And that's that. And I think a combination of all of those things put together is the reason why we saw that.
So I think you're probably right. I'm going to start that off. I think you're probably right that this debate most likely will not change the outcome of the election and will not swing too many votes. But if there was a victory to be had, it was definitely Mike Pence. I thought Mike Pence did a pretty good job, and I actually wasn't aware that he was a decent political debater. I'm not talking like an Oxford debater, like, oh, this guy is making excellent points. But I think for like the generic kind of news watcher, I think most people are like, okay, compared to what we saw last week, thank God I feel a little bit better, let's just say, if Trump won. Like, at least Mike Pence has a head on his shoulder.
Feel a little bit better. Yeah, exactly.
So I thought that...
I disagree that he won, but I will agree that relative to the last one, this is a Pence win.
Yeah, so I think that... I think Kamala Harris looked awful. She portrayed herself as very off-putting. And not likable in pretty much every regard. I'll just sum this up because I don't want to just regurgitate just standard right-wing talking points, which I'm at risk of doing right now. So she just reverted to a lot of debunked DNC talking points, taking Donald Trump out of context, and a lot of things like the refused to announce white supremacy stuff and shit like that. And it kind of put it up as an easy slam dunk for Mike Pence to kind of refute those and be like, hey, those were actually taken out of context. All you need to do is just take a Google search and see and hear what Donald Trump said about the Charlottesville thing, about good people on both sides, to realize that he was saying there were good people on both sides of the statue debate, and there are bad people, and denounced neo-Nazis and the KKK intensely during that whole thing. So I just think that doing that just makes yourself look bad, and especially for anyone who's curious, who looks that stuff up. It's very easily refutable to see how that language is taken out of context. In addition to that, there were other things that, and Pence was guilty of some of this as well, but I'm concentrating on Kamala right now. Just the Green New Deal thing. Man, are they just don't know how to come out to their voter base with this? Neither her or Biden. They do not know how to explain the Green New Deal and what their positions are on it, because it's very unclear of what their position is on the Green New Deal, and if they support it, or what their version of the Green New Deal is. I don't know. Do you have any insight on that?
Kind of. I mean, honestly, I think that what's really hurting Biden and Kamala on this one is the fact that Kamala was, in fact, one of the first co-signers of that bill on the Senate side, or of that movement and that idea, the Green New Deal. So that's definitely hurting them, and they're definitely backpedaling, trying to distance themselves. And I think it's fair for when Pence said that, you know, the Biden plan is very similar to the Green New Deal in everything but name. I think that's a bit exaggerated. They are quite different. One main noteworthy difference between the Biden plan and the Green New Deal would be fracking, and they talked about that at length during the debate. No one who knows anything about the Green New Deal, or, you know, initially authored it, would ever think to include fracking in their idea. As a matter of fact, when Kamala was saying, oh yeah, Joe Biden supports fracking, Joe Biden's not trying to get rid of fracking, she was actually losing me. I was like, wait a minute, no.
Well, that's what I thought of.
I was like, wait, no. Why do we need fracking? Because of jobs or something like that? There are other ways to make jobs. And so I think, you know, just that alone by itself should give you, or any conservative out there that is confused about what the Biden plan is and whether or not it's exactly the Green New Deal, just that by itself should tell you it is not the same. It is definitely not the same. Is it similar? Hell yeah. Does it definitely have like elements of the Green New Deal in it? Absolutely, right? But is it the Green New Deal? It is not, right? So you should. There are key differences, and I think the most glaringly obvious one is the fracking bit. There's no way that would be included in a Green New Deal, like not even a little bit.
Well, here's the thing, and this comes from the sophistry of the right now, and I think that this has been the strategy of the right wing, conservative Inc., who's backed Trump since 2016 for this re-election. It's been to paint the Democrats as radical left. And I think that is a false statement. I do not think that either Biden or Kamala Harris are radical leftist. I think that
not even close.
They're not. It's not even really close. And you can see, and this is why I think Kamala Harris is such a bad choice, because she didn't get you anything, and she could do two things. Now, the first thing is that she has the potential to galvanize Fox News watching people who equate her with Hillary Clinton to get up and vote. Right. Because I'll just tell you, the American right wing does not like her. And they just find her very, very, they look at her like Hillary Clinton. I'll just sum it up like that. The other thing is that she also has the ability to detract progressives who understand that she has a very, very just fucked up history as a prosecutor in California. And it was interesting to see that Mike Pence actually attacked her from the left at one point when he was saying that, like, hey, when you were a DA of California, blacks were disproportionately amount of the people in jail. So it was interesting to see Pence attack her from the left, which I was surprised to see. Another thing is that she touted the support from good Republicans, and then the Republicans that she mentioned were George W. Bush administration officials, such as Colin Powell. She just threw a bunch of neocons in there. Most good, like, lefty progressives that I know who are principled hate that bunch of conservatives. Right. So I
hear what your argument. Even if I don't fully agree with your argument, I hear what you're saying. It's like she's alienating the people on the right. Your basic conservative folks that watch Fox News, who think she's like Hillary Clinton in one way or another. Which for me really just bothers me a little bit. But like I can see it. I understand it. Totally get it. Right. And then on the other side, you're saying alienating like the lefties. Right. And I'm not talking about the extreme left, because they definitely wouldn't like her. But I'm just mean like you're like progressive. Your basic bitch progressives. Who don't like neocons and don't like the fact that she's bringing up all this stuff, and like me, don't like fracking, right? And so she's like kind of in this curious position of pissing everyone off, or at least the majority of the voting blocks, So I see what you're saying. Even if I don't fully agree with all the rationality behind it, I get it.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make is that she ultimately can get people voting on the right and detract voters on the left who may want to actually wait out for an actual progressive. Because it's kind of interesting. You could have had Bernie Sanders running against Donald Trump in a very, like, if you're a progressive and you see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris running, and deep down, like, don't you know that you could have had Bernie Sanders in a very, very easily winnable election, and you could have had your guy in there? Like, doesn't that, like, infuriate you?
Yeah, I mean, it does piss me off a little bit, but it doesn't my anger of that doesn't supersede my disdain towards the Trump-Pence administration on many different levels. Like, I just always come back to the things that I disagree with on their first 4 years, and that certainly outweighs,
I guess it really just depends on what your political alignment is,
exactly.
Because I know your mind was.
I mean, here's one thing. So we kind of got stuck on kind of like how Kamala is alienating, and I think for a lot of reasons, for a lot of opposite reasons as you, Pence kind of does the same thing, right? Pence is this, pseudo milquetoast kind of Republican dude, so he's kind of an easy pick to balance out, smooth out the rough edges of Trump, in that respect. But, he does toe the line pretty hard, in the evangelical Christian ideologue. Now, that's a strong voting bloc, but it does, make people more moderate conservatives a bit leery, right? People who are a bit more, for lack of a better word, woke to the 2020 zeitgeist, might not feel super comfortable about someone like Pence. Now, that's not a knock against his religion. It's just a knock against, how the politics of it works. Much in the same way that lefties wouldn't like Kamala for things like liking fracking, right? It's just the way that it is. And I think the big ticket issue, as I mentioned before, was COVID-19. And as you know, Pence was set up as the virus czar pretty much from the beginning. And I think the optics of sitting at desks, 12 feet apart, separated by plexiglass, and then couple that with the president's diagnosis, with COVID-19, was kind of a hard backdrop to get away from for Pence. This is what he came into the debate with, understanding that COVID-19 was going to be a big issue. And I think, Harris said that the administration's handling of the coronavirus was, quote, the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. Now, whether or not that is factual or not, really honestly depends on where you are on the political spectrum. But just as a one zinger, I think that was pretty tough for Pence to get away from, right? Because the reality is that 210,000 people have died from COVID. And I think, for the average American, that especially for the folks that have lost somebody during this pandemic or have come close, I don't think that they want to hear political, nonsense when they hear people talk about COVID-19. Even more so, the larger audience of people who have been affected by COVID-19, whether it's because of jobs lost or, the many different ways that COVID-19 has fucked up this entire year for a lot of people. And I think, Pence kind of had a hard hurdle to overcome, and Harris hitting him in that way, I think, kind of, in my opinion, put her squarely in the winning camp. I think that she definitely argued pretty well on a lot of those points. I think she accused the president of covering up information about the virus when he was briefed about it in January. I know that Pence retorted back by saying that, he restricted travel from China at the end of January as evidence that they took it seriously. But now we've got this Bob Woodward tapes coming out where, he basically says, I wanted to downplay it. And he had been for a long time, and he's arguably still doing it now, telling people not to be afraid of the virus. Context means a lot. For a lot of people, they're going to see the president saying, don't be afraid of the virus, and they're going to translate it in their heads to mean, don't wear a mask, don't socially distant. We don't have to be afraid of it. It's fine. And that's dangerous. That's legitimately dangerous, and we don't need to relitigate that because lots and lots of people have died.
I think that's exactly what America needs to hear right now. To stop being, take the stick up their asses, and you need to start preparing to get on with your life. We are not a country of dependence.
Okay, the key word in that sentence that you just said is prepare to get on with your life. There has been nothing from the Trump side that gives us the indication that we are prepared to move on with our life. There's nothing there. They keep touting this idea of a vaccine or something coming out, and it's just not there. And all of the people who are working on it are saying we're not going to have a vaccine this year, and when we have the vaccine, we're not going to have enough of it for everyone to have to be able to get back to our lives. That it's going to take a while for us to ramp up to have 660 million doses of this vaccine just for us, right? So I agree that we should start thinking about how do we stop being afraid of this and how do we get back with our lives, because a lot of people are affected with this. But more importantly, as you mentioned, we should prepare for it, and there has been no preparation on the Trump side, and I think Harris did a pretty good job pointing that out. And I think the fact that we have no plan to combat this disease outside of promises. I mean, the president promised it would go away by April. The President promised it would go away when it got warm. President promised we'd have a vaccine any day now. As none of that shit is happening. We need to stop pretending that we have the solution and actually talk about the solution so that we can get back to normal. And that's my issue with the president saying shit like that, because people aren't thinking that deeply enough. What they're hearing is, oh, Commander-in-Chief got COVID, he came back fine, ignoring the fact that he has probably the best healthcare in the world. And, he said, don't be afraid of it, so I'm just going to go on with my life without any preparation or any plan. And that's dangerous. That's for real dangerous.
I understand what you're saying, but I think people need to start hearing that type of language that, hey, listen, this virus will likely be here for a long time, and
right,
you're going to have to get on with your life. Like, this is something you're going to have to deal with, and I don't believe
so,
that
how do we
advice.
Prepare for that, right?
I don't believe. We. How do we prepare for it? Like, I think
right,
that I think it. I think it is.
Right?
I think.
How do we prepare for
see,
it?
This is where you and I just have different worldviews. I think, like, I don't see as we. I see as you. How do you prepare for it? Like, you are an individual person that you need to take responsibility for preparing for this. Like, I don't believe in this collective effort as a country. These collective efforts to shut down other businesses. And essentially just kind of shut down our economies and shut down our markets and really just screw our future generations with a debt that is hard to even contemplate. That will be on the backs of our children, really. The very high risk of going into the territory of hyperinflation is there too. Like, the economic consequences of these lockdowns are so tremendous, and they're going to hit so hard that it's
that's not
going
unique
to
for our country. That's not.
I'm just saying that I think the we is part of the issue. I think it's the you. Like, you need to understand the facts and what will keep you safe, and it's your own personal responsibility that will keep you safe during this pandemic. Like,
so we're not arguing against each other.
We're not arguing.
We're taking two roads to get to Rome. What I agree with you. Social distancing is a personal responsibility issue, right? As is wearing a mask. As is making sure you get a vaccine when a vaccine is released, right? So all of these things are personal issues. So yeah, I agree in a certain respect, but it's also a we thing, because like, not everybody's going to be on board at the same time. And this, if I take a lot of personal responsibility for, for myself and my health and my safety, which does translate in a certain respect to your health and safety, right? By wearing a mask, by making sure I social distance, and so on and so forth, right? However, if only 10 people do it, it doesn't fucking matter. You still have to think about the we, and we still have to have leadership which guides us towards the actual ways of getting on with our lives. It's not just flipping the switch and say, okay, cool, economy back on, you guys figure it out.
So I think there's these two classes of people right now in this country. The
pajama class and the non-pajama class.
Yeah, actually, that's where I was getting at right now. I think that you're the one who actually put me on that article.
Yep.
And I think there is these two. There is like the class that COVID-19 is but a minor inconvenience to. So people who can work from home, people who are not like faced with like the challenges of losing your job, really, and not having,
or whose jobs or industries squarely benefit from COVID-19,
or jobs there's some people whose jobs are benefiting. I mean, there are quite a few. It's not the vast majority of people are not benefiting from this, but there are people whose jobs they're making more money during this. It's easy for those people to be like, we need to collectively get together and make sure that we have a plan. Oh, look at those idiots. They're not social distancing. They're just screwing themselves in the long run. And then there's people who desperately do want to get back to work. And then there are people who are just using this as a fucking lazy excuse not to do anything and just get just get money from the government. They're just like, oh yeah, this is great. This is welfare. This is like an easy. I get my leisure time, and I get paid. I get a fat paycheck. Like these. I know people who are in the service industry, and they were making way more money just not working than working. Like, what kind of plan is that? I think it should have always began with a personal responsibility aspect. Like, it's up to you to understand these challenges and to keep yourself safe. And if you go out at a certain place, or if you know there's going to be a place that's crowded, then that's on you if you get the virus. Like, you need to not put yourself at risk. Now, I think the mandates is what is driving people, frankly, fucking crazy. I'm telling you, this is draining. It's completely just suffocating to have this authoritarian mandate on all these precautions.
If we take the assumption that the country is roughly even with, conservative ideology and liberal ideology, I think we would see an even distribution of how the pandemic affects each people regardless of their ideology. And I think that it's interesting to see how we do see a transcendence beyond just the pajama classing. I mean, because we do see, as you point out, liberals who are very much under hardship because of, mandated lockdowns, who might be feeling some kind of way about, the whole idea of these mandates. And by the same token, we also see, conservative folks who, maybe are not very affected by the pandemic at all, and are therefore much more apt to follow social distancing and mandating. So I think there's a fairly even distribution across the board for people who like it and people who don't, or rather, that's a poor way to say it. People who believe that mandates are a good thing, and people who believe that mandates are not a good thing. And I think this crosses those traditional ideological boundaries, which is an interesting development. As you mentioned, it's like the pajama class versus the non-pajama class. And this kind of is this weird transcendental thing. And I think during the debate, Pence kind of highlighted it, strangely enough, in my opinion. When in my opinion, I think Harris made a pretty big gaffe by saying that, if there was a vaccine, she would take it if it was approved by medical professionals. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, that she's not taking it. And I thought that was incredibly, like a shitty thing to say in general. And I was on Pence's side for this one. And Pence said, stop playing politics with people's lives, basically saying that, she was undermining the public's confidence, in vaccines, which is funny because, there's I think there's anti-vaxxers on both liberal and conservative sides, but the whole idea of it is definitely not stemming from a liberal standpoint, and he's on the one hand saying that Kamala is responsible as a leader for putting out the right opinion and judgment about these steps that we're taking to get back to normal, and she's undermining that by saying it, and I totally agree with him. But at the same time, we do have Donald Trump, who, in my opinion, has frequently undermined the public opinion on basic, basic safety guidelines, whether it be mask wearing or social distancing, etc. So I find this all very, very hypocritical and very on all sides, and it's very troubling in general. And I think this was a big deal.
Like, what was the deal with the Lincoln story that she said?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think this kind of in the backdrop of everyone avoiding every question, and this came up because Pence tried to press her on whether or not she is going to stack the courts if they happen to win. So in the last debate, Biden was asked, are you going to stack the court if you win? And Trump puts in Amy Coney Barrett, right? And for those who aren't very aware of the situation, obviously Trump is nominating this new person. We're about 20 some odd days away from the election. The argument on the Democratic side is that people are already voting, and therefore we should wait until the votes are counted to see who gets to pick the next one. It's all under this irony of, when Obama tried to nominate Merrick Garland back in February of the last year of his presidency, and the Senate majority blocked him from doing that, specifically Mitch McConnell. And so the whole, there's this idea floating around, both in Democratic circles, but also the internet. I'm not sure where it started first. And the idea is that, okay, well, if Biden wins, and Trump has effectively stacked the courts with conservative judges, which, by the way, Pence said specifically, we elected conservative judges, which I thought was a funny way to come at her with that. Anyway, if Biden wins, that they would expand the court, right, from 9 to whatever other number, and put all, liberal judges into those court positions. But I guess the point that, she was trying to hit him back, basically like fight fire with fire, and say, well, you guys are the hypocrites, and without answering the question that she would stack the courts, I think the obvious answer is yes, of course. They would try and do everything within their power to balance out the courts in their favor. And she brings up the 1864 thing with Lincoln, and I think she was totally correct. So I did some research on this because I wanted to know more about this story, because I felt like, that sounds a little weird, but let me read up on it. So apparently Harris is correct that a seat did become open 27 days before the election in 1864. And Lincoln didn't nominate anyone until after he won re-election. But there was no evidence anywhere to say that he thought the seat should be filled by the winner of the election. He never said that. And in fact, he had other reasons why he didn't fill that seat. They were all politically motivated, but they weren't, because he thought it was the right thing to do. And I think that was kind of the stretch that Harris did. So I want to tell you a little story about what happened there. And Henry, please do try and interrupt me if you start, hearing that I'm not actually talking or that we're frozen. Cool?
Yeah.
All right. 1864, on October 12th, 1864, Chief Justice Roger B. Taney died at the age of 87. So he was super old, right? Just like RGB. So he had been Chief Justice for almost 30 years and was super well known for writing the majority opinion in this one particularly heinous case, the Dred Scott versus Sanford case, in which he declared that basically black people were inferior and had, and quote, I'm going to quote here, had no rights which the white man was bound to respect, end quote. So this is a crazy ass court case, and I'm not going to get too deep on the details there. You can read up on it on your own. But I mean, this dude Taney, he had been sick for many years, and it wasn't a surprise to anyone that he died. Kind of like RGB. I mean, she had been battling with cancer for a while. And it was pretty much looming over everyone's head that she could die at any point. So this was a very similar situation, actually. And at that point, Lincoln, knew he had an opportunity to name his own Chief Justice, but basically, what he was going through at the time was more important, more pressing for him. So at the time, he was preoccupied with his campaign for re-election, which was a very tough campaign for him. He could have lost. And he also had the Civil War, right? So we had these two giant things that were preoccupying him, and that's at least in part why he hadn't immediately decided to name a court justice, even though, as Trump likes to point out, you don't leave court justices open, right? You don't leave those things empty. Obama left us all these things, yada, yada. But the point, though, is that the overarching effect of that delay was pretty broad. What happened was he had a shaky coalition of these conservatives and radical Republicans together, and to keep that, at bay, especially during that election season, he basically held off on nominating anyone. And also, Congress was in recess until December. So there basically wouldn't have been any point to nominate anyone because they wouldn't have been able to confirm them until December. And so I guess there's a third option there. He could have actually nominated and appointed someone during their recess time. There is a like little side thing, that a side lever that you can pull as the president, that if Congress is in session, if Congress is in recess, then you could appoint somebody during that recess time, and they serve even until basically the Senate can confirm or deny them. But presidents don't like to do that. It doesn't look good. And that's why we have pro forma Congress sessions, which are bullshit, which basically only one person shows up and says, okay, everybody go home. And that's how they're able to get around it. That's a different thing. Anyway, so Congress is not in session until December. There's a civil war going on, and Lincoln is looking to be reelected, and he's got like a shaky coalition of people behind him in the first place. All of these play into part why, he didn't actually put up a Supreme Court nomination. And the day after the Senate was back in session, he nominated a Chief Justice. And that's after, of course, he won re-election, right? So I think Harris was definitely mistaken about Lincoln's motivations in this regard. But I think one thing, that she could have been saying that would probably be pretty interesting and more directed towards the question, which the question was about court packing, is the fact that in 1863, Lincoln and the Republicans in Congress passed a law to create a 10th Supreme Court justice seat for largely partisan reasons.
So actually, back been a great example for partisan reasons.
That's the thing. What she could, as a lawyer, say is that there is actually precedent, to increase the size of the court, right? And so a little bit about that, in 1863, they basically added a 10th justice, and that was Stephen Field from California, who was a pro-union Democrat. And this was basically an attempt to reshape the court during the Civil War. So specifically, the Constitution doesn't actually set or specify the number of Supreme Court justices that we have, just the fact that we should have a Supreme Court, right? And initially, I think Congress provided just a six justice court. But as the country expanded and as the different circuit courts expanded, we necessitated more justices. So, I think one argument that could be made is, from 1863 till now, we are a much larger country. We have more people, we have more states, and we absolutely have more judicial circuits. So there could be a historical and just logical precedent to increasing the size of the court that we've probably been overdue for. Now, the reason why we would increase it, why Biden might increase it, would be largely political, but you'd be able to argue for it, right? And the fact that a Republican had done it in the past, or Lincoln in this case, kind of puts you at least somewhat on square footing for why you should do it. Again, it's all a political game, just like blocking Merrick Garland was, and just like ramming through Amy Coney Barrett will be. But there's a precedent for it. In any case, in 1807, Congress added a bunch of new circuits, and that provided 2 additional justices. And then again in 1837, they established, through the Judiciary Act of 1837, a 9-justice court, and it stayed that way for about 25 years. But pretty much around 1857, the court's pro-slavery Dred Scott decision, basically, Lincoln was an opponent of this decision. Basically meant that the court was under the political crosshairs, right? They were under the gun. So Lincoln comes out and he's like, you know what? I don't like that decision. I think that decision's wrong. So once he was in power, he had the ability to not only add, I think in total he added 4 Supreme Court justices. Let me just double check that number. Let's go with 4. I think it was 4. I wrote it down somewhere and I've already forgotten. So basically, the precedent here is that between 1862 and 1869, Congress basically gerrymandered the federal circuits to curb Southern influence. And in so doing, they were able to add a 10th justice to uphold a lot of these Union war policies. Specifically, there was one court case that was going on during his reelection about whether or not the embargo on the South was legitimate.
So they were trying to get a 10th judge in there to victimize the South into Reconstruction.
They didn't try. Yeah, they didn't try. They did.
Yeah, excuse me. They did. Lincoln was unpopular with the radical Republican side. Like, he was intensely unpopular on that. He was on the verge of getting impeached. A lot of people don't know that, because Lincoln, there was a side of the Republican Party that wanted to be a lot harder on the South. I'll just say it that way. Then they wanted to basically have him be responsible for like all the war debts and
kind of like a World War I. Where Germany had to pay back all of the war reparations. That's what they wanted to do. Yeah.
So,
here's another interesting point. So that wasn't the only time that they, that Republicans specifically, messed with the court rules to accommodate, like, their own political gains. In 1866, just after the war ended, Congress enacted a special legislation that reduced the court's size by attrition to 7, and that prevented Andrew Johnson, who is a big opponent of congressional reconstruction plans, from nominating any judges, right? So we're talking about, like, this bounced around a lot, right? It was at 9, and then, Lincoln didn't nominate another one when one died for different political reasons. And then once he got reelected, he added a 9th and then ultimately a 10th to uphold a lot of these Reconstruction and pro-union agenda. And then later, they reduced the court back down to 7 to fuck with Andrew Johnson, who didn't like a lot of these plans. And then 3 years later, when Johnson left office, Congress returned the size of the court back to 9 justices, and it's remained that way at 9 justices ever since, right? And so the Republican Party has kind of a bad history in general of messing with with the Supreme Court for political gain. Now, you can give me the argument that, like, the political parties have flopped each other. I get it. But if you were Kamala Harris, if you're listening, Kamala, here's your talking point, right? Republicans like to mess with the courts. And that's their big gain. I mean, Mitch McConnell is pretty clearly vocal about this, for many years. Like, their biggest prize is the courts. They want to stack the courts. Pence, during the debate, himself said, during the last 3 years of our term, we have filled the courts with conservative judges. He didn't mince words about that. They have an agenda and they like playing the court game.
Well, if you're
going to play the court game, hit them back.
Well, that's the. I think a lot of conservatives think that's the only place that they can fight back right now. That they have a firm standing. They have entrenched ground in, because, I mean, if you look at this election right now, everything could flip.
Everything. Literally everything.
Everything could flip. Mm-hmm. So, Mitch McConnell absolutely needs to get a conservative judge in there and flip and get a 6-3 majority on the court of conservatives versus Democrats. But, well, not conservatives versus Democrats, but conservative judges versus more liberal judges is a better way to phrase it, not on partisan lines.
Yes, that's a better way to say it. But, like, if that's the game that we play, isn't it kind of fair game to expand the courts and rebalance that? I mean, when you think about it, when we were originally expanding a court from 6 to 9, the reasons were we have more judicial circuits, and we have more states, and we have more people. Those all created new court cases, which needed to be seen by, the heads of the circuit courts, which ultimately need to roll up to the Supreme Court. So that necessitated more Supreme Court justices. We are much fucking bigger than we were in 1869. Like, we're much bigger.
Who appoints those judges?
By law, by the Constitution, the president does.
So
like
that's where the problem
dangerous
comes.
Game that I think
that's where the dangerous game.
This is the dangerous game that I think the Republicans are playing a dangerous game, right? What they're saying is we're going to go ahead and ram through somebody now because we need that. We need conservative judges on our court. But if you look back into history and you look at how we developed these courts and how they've expanded in the past, it's totally probable and, in fairness, totally playing by the rules to expand the court. And since the president gets to pick the court justices, obviously he's going to pick a bunch of Democrats, or I should say liberals, right? So maybe they lay off of this one. Maybe they chill on confirming Amy Coney Barrett until after potentially Trump wins the election.
Well, once you set the precedent of adding more justices to the court, then what's to stop future presidents doing to do that?
Nothing.
So what are we going to have? Like 100 judges in the Supreme Court?
But so yeah, but that's.
I'm going to add 5 judges. Well, I'm going to add 6 judges. Well, I'm going to add 7 judges.
Yes,
well,
that is
President Biden added 3 liberal judges. No, he added 4, so it was 7. It was 7 to 3. So we're going to add 2 more judges. So President Crenshaw, when he takes office, he'll be like, I'm going to add 2 more justices, so we have a majority, and then. Right. When does this game stop? I think that's why I think that's the purpose of having a finite number of slots open for the Supreme Court. So presidents can't use that to expand their power.
We both agree that it's crazy, that this is a crazy game we're playing. But I think that the crazy game doesn't start at expanding the judges. It starts at fucking with the rules for confirming existing picks. This game started when Mitch McConnell decided to block Merrick Garland months before the election. This was their own doing. And this is like you said, conservatives, this is the hill that they want to die on. They want a conservative majority in the courts.
It's incredibly unpopular to do that.
It's important for them.
The thing is, though, it's very unpopular across the country to expand the court size. I think it's like 30% of the people in this country are in favor of that. Well, you can make a legitimate. I think that whatever.
I think that'll change.
I don't think that. I don't think that's changing.
Will change. I think it's changing now. Actually, I mean, you wouldn't hear about this idea if it wasn't already changing.
I think that there's a reason why she refused to answer that question is because she knows how unpopular it was, and that's why Biden and Kamala Harris aren't answering that question, because they know that it's an unpopular position and they know it's a power grab.
Look, I think that what the Republicans are doing right now is a power grab. So what's going to happen
they took advantage of the fact that 3 justices were open. 3 spots were open. Right. They took advantage of it. They blocked Obama, but the Democrats did the same thing.
Look, I'm not saying that I agree with this move. What I am saying is that it is totally a legitimate political move to expand the court, because it's been done in the past, and logically speaking, we probably should expand the court because there are too few of them, because we're much, much larger than what we used to be, by a fucking lot. So, be that as it may, I don't think this is a good game to play because it'll continue. But frankly, I'm kind of sick of the Republicans playing the court game, because that's what it is right now, a game, taking advantage of the political situation so that they can stack the court in their favor. The court should always, I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of stacking the courts in a conservative or a liberal way. I think the court should always be balanced. And if they're going to play the game and make it imbalanced, then expand the court and balance it out.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. If I was a Democrat, I'd probably be pretty pissed too about what happened with Obama's final year. But
dude, I'd be pissed if this was Obama doing it and he was stacking the court with liberal judges.
But the thing is,
we shouldn't have a politically
adding justices,
ideological lean. Sorry,
I think adding justices is a very, very dangerous game.
Honestly, as was blocking Merrick Garland. That was a dangerous political game. Because it led to this. That's what it led to.
but adding a justice adds a whole another dimension to that. I get the
as does securing a conservative lean for the next 40 plus years. There are consequences to that too.
Well, I guess we'll
longer term consequences, but they're consequences. And I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying there are consequences to it.
I guess we'll find out what the consequences are.
Right.
All right. Do you want to keep on talking about the debate, or do you want to kind of overview some other stuff?
Let's look at some other stuff.
Okay. So, so there was a pretty big news story that happened that most people aren't covering right now, and it has to do with Russiagate, good old Russiagate. And we don't really talk too much about Russiagate. However, this was just way too interesting and telling not to bring up. But so apparently, allegedly there was a note that was declassified, written by John Brennan, about briefing Barack Obama that Hillary Clinton had made up Russiagate to distract the world, distract people across the country from her email scandal. John Ratcliffe declassified information saying, tying Hillary Clinton as basically the inventor of the Russiagate scandal. The source of this material is not completely clear, because what the note says from John Brennan is that here's what it says. The handwritten note. It says, "We're getting additional insight into Russian activities from Redacted." So that's a source. Like, that's the source. Mm-hmm. Right. Site summarizing alleged approved by Hillary Clinton a proposal from one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up a scandal claiming interference by the Russian security service. Mm-hmm. So there was a briefing that took place, but this note is still redacted in a large part. So now there's two sides to look at this. I think that most Russiagate believers are going to be like, well, that was just like misinformation from Russia that was trying to like confuse everyone. That's what John Brennan said. That's what it was about. But then there's people like me who believe that's probably the truth, that it was made up by Hillary Clinton. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
You know, you gave me this article, and I started reading it, and my initial idea was fake news. And honestly, I read through it, and now there's some legitimacy to it, and it's making me want to review the original charges that a lot of the people on the left were making for Donald Trump collusion, right? Like, this new information doesn't make me feel like I was wrong. It more makes me feel like I need to relook at the evidence that as it was presented before to see how this may have been corrupted by the Clinton campaign. Like, how did Clinton utilize this to her advantage? I don't necessarily think that it disproves it, but I think that she definitely used it to her advantage, specifically against the to like get people off of the email thing, you know, because that was the big topic of the day against Hillary Clinton, that she was using a private email server, right? And I can totally see when reading through this article that she would use literally anything at her disposal to get the fire off of her and onto Donald Trump.
It really does fit in the timeline to make sense that this was something that was made up on her camp, because all right, WikiLeaks released all their article. They released those emails on July 22nd of 2016. This was allegedly written. This brief was from July 26th, 2016. Now, after that, so before that, the Clinton campaign manager, Robbie Mook, he went on CNN and he made the first allegation that Russia had hacked the DNC in support of Trump. And Mook made these claims without any evidence.
Not to cut you off, but I wonder how
the Steele dossier,
with also...
which was complete garbage, was written like 4 days later from that. So
I wonder how this coincides with the 11 hours of testimony that Clinton had to give on the email thing, because that was kind of an important part of the article that you sent me, that she was using this as a way to leverage against the email story.
This Russiagate stuff is insane, man. I don't really have too much else to really say about this. I don't think this is the smoking gun, because there's not clear proof, and there needs to be further redactions on this classified information. And obviously this is being released, declassified in October, so it's obviously for political reasons. But man, there's a reason why Democrats aren't talking about Russiagate anymore, about Russian interference, because it's been debunked. There's no evidence. There has never been evidence about a collusion. There's not even evidence that the DNC was hacked by Russia. There's not even that. There's no evidence that the crime that they're talking about even took place. Nevertheless, that there was a collusion between Donald Trump and Russia to do this crime in conjunction with each other.
I'll be the first to admit that I'm wildly unprepared to have a conversation about this, because in the time since the Russiagate scandal, there's been so much other interesting shit that I've literally forgotten all of my best points on this. And so, like I said earlier at the top of this, when you sent me this article, it didn't necessarily make me go, I guess I was wrong. It made me want to look back at some of the evidence that you would probably consider as not evidence. As I said in the beginning of this, when I read that article, I think what was interesting about it was that it made me want to re-review a lot of the, quote, evidence that a lot of the liberals were putting out for this collusion theory, and how that relates to, the idea that, this new information that has come out that apparently Hillary Clinton made it all up to help her campaign. And I think that it doesn't refute the evidence for me. What it does is it makes it more complicated for me, and I'm wildly unprepared to talk about this. Okay,
well, I'm happy to hear that you want to review the evidence
100%.
again.
100%. Yeah, because it definitely raised some eyebrows for me, I'm not going to lie. And I was like, okay, well, that's complicated. But I don't think that it completely shuts the book on it, because, well, for one, I might come back to you next episode and be like, hey, you know what, you're right, this was all total bullshit. Or I might be like, hold on a second, this doesn't disprove this, that, and the other thing. I'm just unprepared to talk about it at the moment.
I'll take that as a small victory.
You can have it. You can have it.
I'm joking. I know I kind of hit you out of the blue with that one, so I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not.
It's like I'm thinking about fucking the election.
I know. There's so much other stuff. There's
coronavirus and all this other shit, and I'm like, wait, Russiagate? I don't even remember. What were we talking about before?
It is so hard to remember the details of that case, because there's so much information that came out.
Right.
There's just because such a short amount of time, there was just so much media attention on it, and now there's none, and now there's so much other media things going on. Do you know what is definitely not getting a lot of media attention right now?
What's that?
What's going on in Nagorno-Karabakh?
Oh, the Armenians versus the Azerbaijanians.
Yeah, that's what I've been frantically researching over the past. That's what I've been looking into over the past week. Not coronavirus, or the debates. I've been doing more research on Nagorno-Karabakh, because I don't really know very much about Nagorno-Karabakh, and I'm interested in learning more about it because there's a war going on out there, and no one is safe. But so if you guys don't know, there's a war that broke out in Nagorno-Karabakh. Combat has entered its 11th day at this point. About half of NK's population has been displaced due to recent fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The population of the area is about 150,000 people, so about 70,000 people have been displaced. And we have a death toll of about 360 people. Civilians are included in that. Both countries have been firing artillery into each other's borders. And we have Armenia and Azerbaijan fighting over this is a slot of land that is technically part of Azerbaijan, but is populated by Armenians. So there's just these border clashes, and Turkey is supporting Azerbaijan by supplying them with drones and moderate Syrian rebels. And they're all coming in through Georgia. And It's kind of like the theme of the war kind of seems like the breakup of Yugoslavia. There's like these weird music videos that are going back. Like there's like a battle of music videos going on right now between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I sent you the one from Azerbaijan. I think you agreed that Azerbaijan won one.
You sent me two of them, one from Azerbaijan and one from Armenia. And if the way I look at it, do you remember when Drake and Meek Mill had like this beef and they did like opposing videos and music, right? And that was back to back, right? Like that's when Drake released that second track, and they were doing this diss track. I think in this case, Azerbaijan is Drake and Armenia is Meek Mill. I think that Azerbaijan's music video, song, literally everything was epic and kind of cool, and the Armenian one, not so much. I think they're losing the war for public opinion with their music video.
Well, I'll give you that, because the Azerbaijan music video, I would encourage people to look it up. They're like playing metal and stuff and like shooting missiles and just
they're like playing bass in the middle of a desert. There's like some shit like that. Like it looks kind of cool.
There's a hot female soldier like launching a missile and then playing the air guitar, and you're like, oh yeah, these guys look like some crazy 80s movie gone wild. Like, this is awesome.
Right.
And then
huge production quality too, right? Like, we're talking about a 2020 shot. Like, it was good. It's probably 4K, it looks good.
And meanwhile, Armenia's music video is just like very ethnic looking. Like, it's
like 6 Armenian dudes dancing to Armenian music.
There's like 6 Armenian guys and the occasional missile that's going off in the background.
It's like they're on a hill and they're doing like these dances together. They're wearing the traditional Armenian garb. There's no words to it. Not that I understood the Azerbaijani words, but like there were words. And they're just kind of doing this weird dance. It's a cultural ethnic dance. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it weird. It was just weird for me because I've never seen it, And then interspersed for the dancing is just like you said, the occasional, here's a mortar going off. Here's a tank shooting a shell. Here's a sniper rifle bolt, like it wasn't cool.
It wasn't cool. Armenia, cool. You are not cool. You should have saw the other music video.
I mean, that's a shame because Armenia, famous Armenians, they could have got Serj Tankian, the lead singer from System of a Down. He could have made that cool. Or even more relevant, Kim Kardashian. Shit, Kanye West could have came and helped them make a better music video.
Yeah, why not?
And they probably had access. Why didn't they do that?
Why isn't Kanye West getting involved in global conflicts? The other video that was released by Armenia was very Soviet-esque. It was like it wasn't exactly Soviet-esque, but it was very like Serbian, like breakup Soviet of Union type thing. There was like a priest, a general, and a soldier all just singing in like a almost Soviet style chorus. It was very, very, wouldn't appeal to Westerners. Meanwhile, if a Westerner was, choosing which side to pick in this battle of public opinion, they would, knowing nothing about what's going on, 9 out of 10 of them would pick Azerbaijan. Now, the sad thing is that Azerbaijan is the aggressor in this, most likely. And I think that they're probably in the wrong, along with their partners in Turkey.
Yeah, which makes me feel bad for liking their
which
music
makes
anymore.
you... So, if you're Armenian, you're like, fuck you, motherfucker. No, I think Azerbaijan is probably in the wrong, along with Turkey, who seems like the main instigator of this. It's one of those really weird things. So I'll also give a quick history. So this is a breakaway region. This was... there was a really awful war between Azerbaijan and Armenia between 1988 and 1994, which claimed about 30,000 people. And take in mind, these are not huge countries. Since Russia brokered a peace deal in the 90s, NK had been considered a frozen zone with an occasional outbreaks and fighting. And the fighting that's taking place right now is the biggest since the 90s. And the type of rhetoric that's coming out of specifically Turkey and Azerbaijan is like is weird, hyper ethnic nationalist type language where it's like, we all belong to this land. We will expel the Armenian. Like it's weird. Like the things I've seen in Turkish media are very super weird. And it's not really like a classic proxy war, which everyone jumps to. When you see like these, smaller tertiary type states fighting with each other, for at least 150 years, the ethnic Armenian Christians held a majority in that mountain region, and in 1805, when the Tsarist conquered that entire region, when the Russian Empire conquered that region. They did the classic like pit ethnic groups against each other. So for 150 years, the Armenians held the majority in the mountainous regions. The fighting right now can be traced back to the Soviet Union's control over that mountain range, where they were on a path to self-determination, but essentially they were going to give that area to Turkey to make good with them. And what they ended up doing was that Joseph Stalin reneged on that deal and created an autonomous zone. And they were able to kind of prevent violence from breaking out because, there was always a big presence of Soviet troops smothering that area. That powder keg exploded when Armenians sought independence from Azerbaijan at first in 1988. And at that time, the Soviet Union was like just leaving. They were leaving the war in Afghanistan, so they didn't really want or have any motivation to keep that state as part of a satellite or like to quell any type of violence. And both sides were engaged in mass expulsions and ethnic cleansing, and both sides were guilty of war crimes. Combat stopped in 94, and Russia broke a ceasefire, and that really was like the status quo for a long time. There were occasional outbursts, like in 2016, when around 200 people were killed. But other than that, like that status quo frozen zone has been has held up. Basically, it's just kind of like like India. It was like an India-Pakistan type thing, but now it's just it seems to be spiraling out of control with no one saying they want to broker any type of peace deal. And what's spearheading this is just like, I think, just intense nationalism. And I think that Azerbaijan, they have a clear advantage in just like their military spend. They spend between $2 to $3.5 billion in military expenditures versus Armenia, whose budget is just minuscule compared to that, along with their foreign aid, which is about $100 million from the U.S. versus $4.5 million. Their connection with Turkey comes from the fact that they are both ethnically, linguistically Turkish, or Turco-Altaic, and I guess they share that common culture of horse steppe people, and the way that Erdogan talks is like their blood brother type things.
Mm-hmm. Cousins at the best, right?
Yeah. Fun fact about Turkey: they still deny the Armenian genocide.
Right. So another reason for them to back the Azerbaijan.
Yeah. It's getting crazy. The U.S. definitely does not have a dog in this fight. So whatever they do, whoever's making the foreign policy decisions over the next couple of months, even if Trump loses, it will be till the end of the year. I wouldn't get involved in that one. That's something that you don't want.
Probably not.
If you see sometimes you see people fighting, don't want to get involved in that one. I think it is kind of silly, though.
Hey, but here's a...
What's that?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Joe Biden's campaign stated that Russia was to blame because they're arming both sides.
Is that true?
Well, yeah, they arm both sides.
Okay, well, fair then, I guess.
They're more aligned with Armenia, but they sell weapons to both, and the pretext is because we need this area to have kind of a mutually insured destruction thing. We need a balance of power to be the same, because if one side was more powerful than the other, then the other one would annex the other.
yeah, totally.
So that was kind of that's the reasoning behind it. But the U.S. is the same thing. Like, the U.S. arms both India and Pakistan.
Right.
So there's no...
I mean, this could be like a funny thought to have, but, if... it doesn't matter, like you said, who wins this election. Trump is still president until at least January 21st, and this will go on through that time. So whether or not we go in might be swayed by Kim Kardashian, because she is a pretty big, Armenian, activist, kind of. She's big on, the Armenian genocide specifically, and, as you pointed out, Azerbaijan is much bigger militarily, is being backed pretty firmly by Turkey. There's moderate rebels going there, right? So this could be a fucking shit show for Armenia, and she has the president's ear, at least, kind of. We've seen her help out with the first step for for prison reform. Maybe this is one of those things that she whispers into Trump's ear about. That's kind of a legitimate thing to wonder about.
Hey, maybe she does. Hey, she's Kim Kardashian. She's actually done some good in her life.
Yeah.
She got a woman out of jail. She got that lady a presidential pardon. She fought for
with the prison reform thing.
Yeah, for prison reform. Say what you want about her, but she's actually made some good changes. Like what she advocates for her when she does take a advocate position, she usually is on the right side of them. So
she's an advocate for I don't know how to say this linguistically, but she is an advocate for the Armenian genocide, in the sense that she wants to
she's an advocate for
awareness about it.
Yeah.
She wants to raise awareness about it, because not a lot of people know about it, and Turkey completely still denies it.
What genocide?
Yeah. So maybe she does say something. And imagine if Kim Kardashian gets us into a war in Azerbaijan.
That would be rough.
Dude, that sounds like a 2020 thing. That sounds like something that would happen in 2020.
Imagine if you see Kim Kardashian in a music video. Imagine if Kanye West does like a music video with Kim Kardashian, like the motorcycle one.
But for Armenia.
And instead of a
Right.
motorcycle, it's like a fucking drone or
Right. It's an RQ, a Global Hawk.
yeah.
Like it's a Predator, like yeah,
That
could be interesting.
man, 2020 is pretty shitty.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
I wonder what 2021 is going to have in store for us.
I have a theory about that. I think we're just going to do 2020 again. We're just going to get like a do-over.
Please don't say that. 2020 is honestly, I can't complain that much on a personal level because only good things have happened to me this year.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird thing, but
yeah.
On a national level, I'm just like, holy, on a global level and a national level, it's like, what the fuck? But personally, I've not been that negatively affected, which is like a huge blessing.
It's fortunate, yeah.
But I don't know. You had a Britney update, right?
Yeah, I'm going to save it for next time because we're at an hour and a half now. At least that's what it appears to be, and I'm fucking sweating my ass off. So
yeah, I know you're.
And I know you are too.
All right. Thanks everyone. This episode was kind of crazy at some points. It was a thrilling roller coaster. I hope we didn't fall. We definitely flew off the rails a lot. Whenever we do these kind of free-form episodes, that's always the case. Just because Danny and I, we agree, disagree on stuff. Usually we take these episodes, we use these episodes as a chance to disagree with each other. And they always make for interesting conversations and for fulfilling perspective. So I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure that if you enjoy the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel that we set up, rate and review the podcast on iTunes if you're listening there. And we also have a Patreon account. The Patreon account is when you sign up, we give you a invitation to our Slack group, and through our Slack you can communicate with us and talk to us, give us ideas, network. It's a fun Slack. So I would encourage you guys to check it out if you're a fan of our content. We're also going to be releasing like exclusive content. We'll probably release like an extended version of this podcast on the Patreon. So join it if you guys want to support us. And as always, thank you guys for listening. And I'll leave you with the last word.
Vote.
Vote or die.